know your primary client, right? You need to know your audience. You need to know your market. Make a research.
A very good lesson for us is really do your due diligence, understand your market, understand the clientele. Boots on the ground, very important. Get out, walk your property. Before you put money in with a syndicator, you like a property, you want to do your due diligence on them. What's their experience? Talk to their past investors. Make sure they're really their past investors. Really do a deep dive in them to make sure they are exactly who they say they are.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast, The Path of Progress. Today, I'm joined by really interesting person. This person being in real estate entrepreneur, and he's seen business from all sides: investor, operator, broker, educator. Joe Killinger started in the business with no silver spoon, just hustle, grit, and passion for growth. Over the years, he scaled 3 real estate companies to over $5 million in revenue within 18 months. And now he's not only running operations, but also sharing knowledge with the next generation of investors through YouTube, speaking, and interviews like this. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
It's an honor to have you. I know you have great following, and I know you've been very focused on education. So thank you for coming today, and maybe we'll help educate our listeners a little bit on their journey of their path of progress. So, Joe, I would like to start from the beginning. How did your journey into real estate really begin?
Well, it started, I'm from a small community in central Nebraska. I grew up on a working farm, a town of 281 people called Wallback, Nebraska. It was actually classified as a village. Great place to grow up. Didn't really like it when I was there, but now I look back at it and go, what an opportunity that was. But growing up on a farm, you learn, work ethic. And but my father at the time, farming wasn't great when I was growing up. And my father continued his education, got his auctioneer's license and his real estate license. And I really wasn't interested in the auctioneer side of it, but the real estate side of it, for some reason, just put a bug. I just had to. I love listening to him talk about real estate. The deals, setting up the transactions, all of it. I just absolutely loved it. So as soon as I turned 18, I got my real estate license in Nebraska. And for some reason, Wood Brothers Realty in Lincoln, Nebraska, Pace Woods Jr. actually hired me as a salesperson, which now back then, the way they would train you was they'd put a telephone book in front of you and say, okay, here's the people you need to call. And that was my training for the most part. But I got another gentleman took me under his wing. And I mean, I was 18, but I looked like I was 12. I was parting my hair to the side. I got some fake glasses just so I could look. I thought it made me look a little older. I don't know if it did or not. Probably just stupid. So I started learning from that guy how to sell farms. But then my parents ended up losing their farm. So I ran out of money and I had to go somewhere. And I ended up in California and just drove. And that's where I ran out of money and got started there. And I got my real estate license. Worked as an assistant to a residential agent that was doing very well down in Southern California at Tarbell Realtors, and just didn't really care for that. And then I ended up doing some investing with some people that we were doing flips on homes, and the economy turned on us. And then I got into real estate auctions, and I love that business. And I ended up, my now business partner, George Pino, is the CEO of our commercial real estate brokerage company, laid me off from that company because he ended up being my boss, which is another story. It's way too long to get into, but he got laid off a month later. And then I brought him, I said, listen, if you want to come over here and do where I'm at now, then we'll do these auctions 50-50 and we'll just go forward. So we started our own startup with a big residential firm here in Los Angeles. It was called Fred Sands Realtors. Our company was called the Sands Group, and we launched. And away
Joe, you went from A to Z super quickly.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people know you, but this is very important for us. The little milestones on your journey.
Yeah.
I understand you tried in real estate as a sales agent. Then you have to move to California, and that was a pivotal moment for you, and you started flipping. Can you describe a little bit that moment? What year was that, if you don't mind recalling? And how was that market at the time? You said the rental side wasn't your really cup of tea. You still made money, so you paid for your living, but you started doing flips. How was it?
It was in the late 80s, and I don't remember the exact years, but it was the late 80s. And it went from, you could just buy a property, do some fixing, and I would live in the home. I would live in the home, fix it up, and then as soon as it was done, we'd put it on the market and sell within 24 hours. We had that cash. But it was amazing when it turned in the late 80s. It turned quickly. And we were in the middle of construction on a couple homes. And fortunately, we were able to get out of them and break even. So that's why I ended up at the auction company, because I had no job. And I had
Now it
just a
makes
little
sense.
bit of money
Okay,
left.
because you went from flipping to auction real quick, and we're like,
Right.
I
Yeah,
mean, flipping
sorry,
in
yeah.
California sounds fun. Sounds
Yeah,
like
no,
it can be
sorry,
profitable venture.
trying to keep it short. I don't want your viewers, don't want to lose your viewers. But then we did this startup with a real estate auction company called the Sands Group. And it was a hard start. You know, we had never done an auction before. I'd been in the marketing department. George had been in the closing department, but we'd never set one up. We've run them. We've run the auctions, but we never actually did one ourselves through business development. And we just sat and started cold calling everybody. We would start calling back east in the mornings. 7 a.m. we get to the office, start calling back east. All banks and developers that were developing in LA. And we'd work our way across the country, just calling every bank we could get our hands on. And the RTC, Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, we called them too. And we end up with Hawaii at the end of the day. And then we would have to stop and then fold letters to everybody that we spoke to. Had a letter, printed it out, really no internet to speak of. So, had to go hard mail.
No, I understand. But can you explain a little bit? So this auction business. So the idea is, so if someone's going to default foreclosure, no, not foreclosure, right? So what was the auction for? Is it properties?
It was foreclosure properties. Yeah, it was foreclosure properties. Freddie Mac at the time was taking thousands of properties or hundreds of properties a day back, and they ended up being our biggest client. And we would auction off. We were doing like 600-700 properties a year. We would have 1 to 2 to 3 closings every day that we were at work. And so, plus doing the business development, resale, it was crazy times.
So it was from cold calling. How old were you at the time?
Late 20s.
Late 20s, and you already transacting 600 to 700 properties a year just through this stuff. So how did you build this credibility with those companies? Did your partner have some credibility and experience?
No, neither one of us. I came from the marketing side. Fortunately, I came from the marketing side, and he came from the ability. He knew how to close the deals. And so we went to the bank and said, listen, we're a new startup. I know the company that you're dealing with because they're the one that laid us off. I said, we're better. I said, we're hungrier. I said, just give us a chance. And, we were calling everybody. And they really liked the fact that we were the smaller, more nimble. If they needed a change, we're like, fine, we'll do it. Well, that's not a problem for us. And so just being nimble was the biggest thing for us, because those big institutions, they wield a lot of power when they have that kind of inventory. So you had to kind of do what they wanted to do. And there weren't many players in the industry. Unfortunately, we were probably the number 2 within the first year. And then we just took off after that. And once we got a couple deals, and it was very fortunate because both my business partner and I were down to just a few $100s left in our account. So it was a lot, but it was, probably the biggest thing for us was knowing our market, because a lot of the business development guys that we were up against at these other companies were just rolling calls all day, every day, just getting in touch with people, trying to get But what we would do is George and I would get in a car every week, one day, or at least 3/4 of a day. We would go out and just drive LA, and we would end up driving clear down to San Diego, never take a freeway, always looking at the different projects that were available, that were being built and were getting ready to come on the market, and we would cold call on them. But knowing our market so well is what got us the business, because when we could sit and talk to everybody about everything going on in our community, when I say community, I mean from probably up to Santa Barbara down to San Diego, we knew the developments and we knew what was going on with each one of them. And back then, you had to drive it. You didn't get on the internet and go find them. You had to drive it. And the fact that we took that time to learn to market like that was huge. And that's really what got us going, was our depth of knowledge in our marketplace.
And a leap of faith, right? Because $200 in your pocket, and you still have to spend money for gas. You still have to live somehow.
Yeah, you never want to be crazy enough to do that, right? It was hindsight now, but I also knew I didn't have a choice, because my father's mindset was, what did it cost you to move to California? And I told him to go say, I'll give that to you when I see you at the front door. And so there was no options. And so when you don't have options, you figure it out very quickly.
For sure. But you said it's important to know the market, but also you mentioned he grew quickly to six, seven nationwide auctions. So how does a local known market, did it just local market give you credibility in first business and then you were able to grow nationwide, or you were
We
just
didn't really
focused on that
go.
area?
We stayed on the West Coast. No, we didn't go
Okay.
too far, but we just had so much inventory out here in California. There was, I mean, we would do Inland Empire, San Diego, LA. I mean, we spent more time in the Inland Empire in Los Angeles. We did hundreds and hundreds of homes out there. And we would do, when we would do an auction, we would do 150 to 250 properties in a weekend, so that was a lot.
So okay, so there big. I feel like there should be a big lesson here. How did you scale and were able to maintain the scale from team of two people managing to 150? Did you grow the team right away? Did you know how to execute? What was your plan?
We knew how to execute. We were very fortunate. So the company that we partnered with, our company was called the Sands Group. And the guy that owned the residential real estate firm that we partnered with was the majority holder of that. He had a marketing department. I did the closing or did these resales. So when a property sold at auction and it had to be resold, I would go back out and resell it. But I also had lists of people because people were wanting to buy them. And George would handle the closings. Closing coordinator just happens to be George's wife. She worked at an escrow company and she knew everything about auctions. That's how we met her at an auction, actually. She handled all of our closings. And so you had escrow was good. Then we had in-house marketing through the Fred Sands Realtors. They took care of that. The day-to-day operations, we didn't, it was just George and I. We knew how to handle it.
So you got the fee on auctions, and also you got a back end lead flow for the properties that didn't sell, and then you had the market for those from your pipeline of
Yep.
real estate brokerage, and now you created your on a sheet CRM,
Oh,
and
it
you
was all on paper. You just really learned how to be extremely efficient. You really understood how important your time was because the phone would never stop ringing. That's the thing is and you'd fax. The phones and the fax, right? It was kind of annoying. You had to have a fax in another room because they just keep coming in constantly. And so you just had to learn how to really understand the value of your time. It probably wasn't healthy. We didn't really understand. We were so young and there was nobody mentoring us. We ended up in the middle of this and there was no time to get mentored because we had so much coming at us all day, every day. We should have had an assistant, but I just didn't even think.
you were just putting down the fires. Basically,
Yeah,
you just had one job, and you didn't have time to think about, hey, who can I help with
yeah,
this and that. So you just always have constant fires. You just put them down. Just listen.
yeah. You're just
I have to muscle through
constantly.
it.
But when somebody calls, say, "Well, I can't go through the property at auction," I do. Okay, very good. There's no negotiating. You just move on to the next one because we had lists of buyers, but it was also our structure. We created templates for everything, so we knew exactly where everything was. And we had one of those first Apple computers that's about that big and that tall. That's what we ran the whole damn company on. So, different times, but we had all the templates and the spreadsheets, and it was just very structured for what we had.
I think what it big teaching here is doesn't matter your age is you need persistence and just to follow up and creating a system on the way. You didn't overthink it. You didn't create system first. You didn't think about all the steps. You just jumped to the fire and you figure out what to do along the way. And I think that's important here. Okay, so what happened with the company? You said it was folded later on.
Yeah,
What
it
was the
ended
reason
up,
for that?
so all auctions are online now, and it's so much more efficient. It's so much easier, right? Because we'd have open cry auctions. We had to show up at the hotel. We'd have a few hundred people, and the back room would be huge, and negotiations would be happening. Now it's all online. It's a lot easier, but we also knew it was going to be short lived. So we were very, very thankful for the business that we had. But we also knew we had maybe a good 5-6 year run, and that was about exactly what we had. And then the owner of Fred Sands Realties sold his company to NRT, and which meant no more auction company, which it was pretty much done anyway. George and I had already started doing some bulk sales. We would take the same clients and we'd take 5 to 8 properties and we'd sell them for them. That was working pretty well anyway. I mean, that we weren't hurting by any means. But we ended up going to a company called DBL Realtors. They recruited us over there to start their commercial real estate division for them. And we did that, hired some agents, and then lo and behold, he ended up selling to Sotheby's through NRT again. So we ended up back under the NRT banner each time. So finally, George and I just decided, you know what? Instead of building companies for other people, let's just build our own. And that's how Commercial Brokers International got started, so that we operate now.
Love it. So what year did you start the company?
95.
95.
Yeah.
Now, Joe, have you invested in real estate during this time of your, I mean, you've been around the real estate all this time. Did you have time to invest in real estate? Because I feel you did understand the spread. You understand why people buy this and sell in the.
You bet.
So
I saw the deals that I saw happening at auction that I couldn't purchase because of conflict of interest. They were our clients. I was dying. And finally we got one. We went to I called one of our competitors and said, hey, I'm going to come to your auction, because I got a few times. This is kind of a funny story. So I went to one of our biggest competitors here in LA and went to their auction. I was standing there, my business partner George was standing there, and his wife, and they came up to me and they said, aren't you Joe Killinger from the Sands Group? I go, yeah, I am. They physically escorted me backward out the door. You're not welcome here. And George is standing there going, oh, well, wow. I'm here. So I just left, and he got to stay for the auction. But yeah, it was pretty funny. But now I forgot where I was going with this story. But yeah, it was quite the investing. So we started wanting to invest. We called another one of our competitors and said, listen, we want to come to your auction. We actually want to come as a buyer, though. Do you have a problem with that? They were, absolutely not. Because we didn't care who came to our auctions. There was so much business. There's plenty of business for everybody. We didn't care. And we bought, sight unseen, a condo at 550 Regent in Inglewood. And it was, I don't remember what we bought it for, $70,000. And then we flipped out of it like 5 months later this was a long time ago. We flipped out. Yeah, it was huge. We got very lucky with it. It was huge. We hadn't seen it. Flipped out of it for like 2 something. And we only put like 25, 30 into it. And then we bought a few others. And then we started buying multifamily here in Los Angeles. And we bought a 10 unit for $275,000. And we thought we were way overpaying. We're like, oh man, but I want to own so bad. We sold that property about 9 years later for 2.1. So that wasn't too bad. But here's where I'm telling you that part, because there's a lesson in there. Because the second property that we bought was a 3-story walk-up in Koreatown, largely Hispanic community. Never buy a 3-story walk-up, because keeping those top 2 units filled, because people don't want to carry groceries up 3 flights of stairs. The units were big, they were beautiful, but they were just too high up. So we really struggled with it. And we ended up selling that property, but we got back out of it, but it was very hard to keep those units occupied. So unless you have an elevator.
Know your primary client, right? You need to know your audience. You need to know your market. Make a research. It's a good lesson here.
Yeah, it was humbling. I mean, it was because we thought we were doing so well with all of our investment. I kind of think, it was an ego, I think. We just kind of like, oh, we can do this. And yeah, it turns out we couldn't. And so that was a very good lesson for us. It's like, really do your due diligence, understand your market, understand the clientele, So very thankful for that last thing, getting out of it and making just a little bit of money.
So you sold it in a little profit. Okay, so you didn't lose. It's still a win. But we should celebrate wins. Doesn't matter.
I didn't count my time in there. If I counted my time in there, it's probably a loss.
You got experience. You can't count that, right?
You know what? I think, that's probably exactly it, Alex. The lesson that we learned from that was worth everything.
So, and that was during the time of the auction houses, right? Auction business?
Yeah, this was
right after. Okay, so now you're focusing right at the time in transition to brokerage, and now you're focusing on the brokerage at that time frame. So how long did it take you to grow your brokerage, and what does it look like today since you're still focusing
on the brokerage? Fortunately, we came with a good number of clients. So when we closed down DBL Brokers, which, by the way, they called us on December 9th of 94. And I said, okay. They said, we need to close your division down since we sold the company. And I'm like, all right, well, how long do we have? They go, well, January 1st. And I was up skiing in Mammoth at the time. And fortunately, George is up there with me, him and his wife. And George and I went for a little walk and talked about it. And we decided what we kind of laid a game plan out there in a few minutes, and which we never went any of that direction because we were going to just go to another firm and just be a broker. But when we came back and we were talking to our agents, they said, well, Joe, you're a broker. Why don't we just start our own company? And so that's how Commercial Brokers International actually started. We brought a lot of the clientele. We're very fortunate to have the banks that we could still talk to, a lot of developers we still knew from, a lot of them weren't really developing yet, those contacts, but we just started all over again, just like we did when we started the auction company, is got on the phones. Hey, we're a new commercial broker in town, and we're here to service you. And then we're well received. Since we grew a couple of companies up already that were successful, people were really willing to come on board with us. And it was just picking up the phones and having the conversation. And again, it's just the conversation was always about the marketplace. It wasn't about us. It wasn't about our company. It was about the marketplace and what we knew about the marketplace. And so I think that was probably, again, what really got us going.
It's really interesting, I think, how the time changes, right? Because when you started, everyone was on the phone and like was grinding on the phone, was trying to like get and have this conversation, as many conversations as possible. Then later on, when internet showed up and emails, people were tired of the phones. People like send me emails, send me stuff. And now people going back to phones after this COVID happened, everything, and everyone video calls like this and phone calls, actual live conversations. They're okay, because now there's AI and many robots and people don't know who they talk to. And they need to face-to-face communication. And even if it's visual like this, it's still better than just texting or emailing. So now we know there's no assistant, no VA in Philippines talking to me, but there's actual live person who I'm making business. And that's bringing value again nowadays.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was really, when the internet started coming, really getting into play, we were all figuring out at the beginning. We had a really great receptionist, but she got married and she gave us her notice. And I'd been kicking around. I'm like, this SEO thing, I really got to understand it a little bit better. How's this internet and SEO? How's this all work together? And I started looking at it. And when she quit, I said to George, I just said, you know what? We need to hire a marketing person, not somebody that knows how to put flyers together. We can do that ourselves. But somebody that understands the internet and how we can market on it. And we were one of the first commercial brokerage companies in LA that really went all in on SEO and marketing. And that's been a huge benefit for us. So we were out there and the leads started coming in. The agents were, we give the deals to our agents. And it was a really lucky decision that we jumped on. And then when we wanted to get into video, we hired a lady that came from one of the big YouTube platforms, or I don't want to say Hulu or one of those other, that was before Hulu, but they all came from video. We brought her in to teach us how to do video. When we wanted to really spruce up all of our website and all that, we brought a young guy that just graduated USC, and he had a master's in marketing and the psychology of marketing. So how colors, how everything comes together, and I learned so much from them. And it was a lot. I'm just thankful for the people that we've had. Matter of fact, we had a tech company, and I was running that, and George was running our brokerage company, and I stole him from our brokerage company for my tech company. I stole him from my own company.
So let's jump real quick. So what was the tech company about?
So it was a background check company. It was, credit scores, all that. But it also had, we were in Texas and we owned a bunch of multifamily in Texas, right? And for some reason, some genius in Texas decided to do $100 moves you in for your first month, which I don't know who came up with that one, but damn. So what happens is people would move in on that $100. They'd stay for a month, and when the full rent was due, they just wouldn't move. And then you had to evict. And that took another 30 days to really get the paperwork going and all that. And they never planned on paying rent ever. They just moved in on that $100. So we worked with Judge Sorcone in Dallas and a few other attorneys and really set up a system where you could track those individuals that were doing the skipping. So the last four of their social, the make and model of their car, partial of their license plate, all this information, but it had to be behind a secure wall. So you had to become a member, and becoming a member, then you got tenant screening at a certain price. And it took off like gangbusters in Dallas. I mean, we are in Texas. We were growing so fast, but our main competitor didn't really like that. And so instead of offering to buy the company or anything like that, they just went out to all of our clients and said, we're going to give you 1 year for free of tenant screening. And it's a profit center for multifamily or for investors. They're getting it for 15, turn around selling it for 30 or 45. So it's a profit center. And, so that was just extra profit for them. So we struggled with that for a while. We ended up selling the company off, but it was really, we started buying multifamily in Texas then too while I was there.
Love it. That was my next question. So I like how your business is related between each other. At first, you weren't real estate as a working agent, sales agent, and you went in the rental and flipping, and then you went to auction. On auction, you got a lot of leads, a lot of connections. You understand how it works, what people do. You had a lot of conversations, and not only with regular guys, but with big institutions that selling all this stuff. So you had very high level many conversations. Then you went to your brokerage with all that package experience, with talking to high level institutions and to regular Joes that doing flippies. And then now you're already in commercial space. You grow that pie, and you understand the need for underwriting and better due diligence on a tenant base. And you creating that side of business. I love how your business flow is very seamless between each other, and you understand how to complement each skills. You understand the need of the market, and you're very, very humble about it. I appreciate it. So while you were doing that, you said that you also buy multifamily in Texas. So tell us about that.
Oh yeah. So here's a little caution. So we were buying properties there. Our first acquisition was a 73 unit. And then the second one was a 400 unit. And both of them were out-of-state owners, but local property management companies. Both properties had property management, two different companies, but they had on-site manager that was receiving a salary. And I'll talk about the 73 unit first. So the 73 unit, she was receiving a salary, and then there was an assistant. There was a handyman, and then there was a more senior handyman on 73 units. I was just like, what is all this stuff? And I'm sitting there looking at this, and I could tell that the current owner had never been here. And, there was vacant units, I think, were probably, it was a mess. And so we were looking at their books, and I'm sitting there with the current manager, and she goes, are you going to keep me on? I said, I doubt it, because your salary is double what everybody else in the industry, in the area is. She goes, no, it's not. I showed her, she goes, I get half of that. She goes, the property management firm is keeping the other half, evidently. The person that had a free unit, the maintenance guy that had a free unit, didn't even work on that particular property, worked on one down the street for the property management company. And the assistant was only there part-time and getting paid full-time. So they were just pocketing all this money off of this individual. The 400 unit was very similar situation. And so we just cut a bunch of expenses as soon as we bought the property. So boots on the ground, very important. Get out, walk your property. And we had another one that it showed that all these units were vacant. And we go out there and they were occupied, and the manager had moved them in. Like, she quit the day we came out there because we were getting ready to buy it. And that was new. She didn't show up. And she was collecting rent from those, what we're showing as vacant apartment. She was putting in her own pocket. So boots on the ground, very, very important. And so we built a nice portfolio of multifamily up in Texas. We were in low to moderate income areas. And we did something a little bit different because we had a program we were doing called Learning Link Centers. And we would work with local schools, and we would offer teachers discounts in their rent if they tutored all the kids that lived in the building. And then we'd take a unit, or the big property, the 400 property, we had an old gym. We turned that into a resource room and had computers with educational software and mini library for the kids to check out, books, board games, and all that. And that's then where the teachers tutored those kids 4 nights a week, because teachers at the time were driving from teaching to doing tutoring at night because they wanted to have more money. So this allowed them the opportunity just to go home and then just tutor right there. And then at the resource room and then just walk home. And so the teachers loved it, the kids loved it, and the program worked incredibly well. These kids, actually, one just reached out to me last week. I haven't seen her since she was like 12 because her family moved. But she reached out to me on Facebook and just said, that program changed my life. And so, that it allowed these kids to have a safe space to go to because there's a lot of gang activity in the area that we were in. And it really stabilized those properties because we were willing to take less of an income for what we were doing in the community. But we didn't figure out is that I didn't have turnovers as much. I didn't have damage on properties. I wasn't fixing gates and lights and all that all the time. Crime essentially dropped because the people that lived on the property started kind of self-managing it. And they would tell me when something was going on. Instead of this, when, the owner's here, don't say anything, they would call. They would call and say, hey, you've got people hanging out front. And we work closely with the police department. And those communities performed very well. Now, the 400 unit we did struggle with because when the financial crisis hit, a lot of those properties went into foreclosure and crime spiked all around us. And there's just nothing we could do.
So in this community where you have tutors, teachers living there, what year was that did you implement this strategy?
We did that for probably it was earlier than that. It's probably 93 until I think we held on to the properties for 7 years across the board. And then what we didn't figure out though, Alex, is that when you have a program like that, it does stabilize the community, but you eventually run out of kids because since nobody moves anymore, everybody stays there and the kids get older and then move out of the building. And so, but the community was still good, but our investors got like, hey, we need to pull our funds out and do this someplace else. And so then the market.
Yeah, but won't be replenished with new kids and new kind of.
Nope, nobody moved. Everybody stayed. So that the attrition rate in that area, it was just constant turnover. But once we got stabilized in that community, nobody moved. So as the kids graduated, they went on to, and we had a foundation called Education Advantage Foundation. They gave them scholarships to get them on to higher education. Now, if they went to go work somewhere, we'd help them with their clothes and all that to get them started. But yeah, eventually nobody moved. And so we're like, okay, so we're out of kids, and the teacher didn't have any tutor, didn't have embedded tutor, and we had that resource room sitting there with nobody in it.
Back to general multifamily structure. Let's repurpose that room back to something else.
Yeah, we kind of had to. But you know what? I was out by one of those properties. We haven't known them for a long time. And, the areas changed, and not because of anything we did. But a lot of those tenants or their families are still around there. It's amazing. It's amazing when that area changed.
I love it. Actually hearing that someone from that time reached out to you from 90s, that their life was changed because of that. It gives me goosebumps. I mean, it's such an important and touching moment, I think, and that you were able to touch so many lives just with one project and to change. And I think it also could have given a push to the community in that area, right? Because now how many units was in that building?
One was 20, 25, and then 40, I think it was, when the other three. There's 3 of them all in one area. But it's not so much me. I just had the idea. It's the teachers. The teachers were the glue to that whole thing. They were what drove everybody there. Those teachers, they just put it all together. They would bring ideas and, I'll tell you one fun that we did. So there was a lot of gangs in the area. Halloween came around. These kids had never been trick-or-treating. And I'm like, you haven't done what? So you can't miss out. So the teacher said, listen, I'm going to make costumes in the resource room. And I said, you know what, then we're going to supply the candy and then we're going to give it to the tenants. And then the kids can go door knocking trick or treating right within their building. And so those kind of things but everybody loved it. So the kids got all dressed up with the costumes that they'd made. And because it was too much gang activity outside of those buildings. So those kids would be out there doing it. So these teachers were the game changer in finding. It just comes back to finding the right people.
Safe environment for kids and to grow and to stay focused on the education. I love it. So one big question here. I know it was a long time ago. How did you source those leads? Was it part of your brokerage deals that you got into your attention?
Shit, that was a long time ago. They would probably. I think they were just on the open market, and we knew the area we wanted to be in, which is Baldwin Village here in Los Angeles. And if you ever seen the movie Training Day, that's Baldwin Village. A lot of those people in that movie from Training Day are actually gang members that were out there. And so, it was a very tough area, but there's not a lot of parking. It's not too far from LAX. So the apartments were huge, which we needed for the resource room. There was a lot of families because the apartments were huge. So it was just an ideal place for us. And, the gang activity, it really pivoted. We got to where we knew the gang members and we would talk to them. And some of them had kids in in the facility. And it was something.
I think
it was a lesson.
It boils down to one important lesson is know your market. Yep. Back to your roots, know your market, know your audience, know your neighborhood. If you know it and you can recognize opportunity and you can mitigate some of the risk and just talk to community, understand the needs of it. And you were able to recognize it soon enough.
Alex, where the idea came from was coming from such a small town. If I needed help with any homework, I could call my math teacher, Francis Kohler, and he would walk me through it over the phone. Now, my aunt was my English teacher, so that wasn't hard reach, but, that's where the concept came from. So, really including your community and what you're doing, if it's investing or brokerage, very important. We're working on 3 events for our company right now to involve our community. We're doing art and music, art in the garden here at the end of September. We're doing an exotic car show in Santa Monica, and in Beverly Hills, we're doing another art event with doing an exhibition. So getting involved within the community. And that works for investing too. Investing and brokerage both.
Yep. Education, giving back to community. And it just it helps a long way for sure. Now, are you still buying multifamily? Are you still buying different asset types? So
yeah.
What are you doing on the investment side?
So we're focused on single tenant net lease deals right now. Matter of fact, we're getting ready to raise money for a syndication. But so our deals that we had in Texas, an investor came and he said, listen, I want to buy your portfolio. This is where I want to be. And, I liked your properties. And we said, well, they're not for sale, because we planned on taking some of these properties, demoing them. And because one of them was over an acre and it had the 70 units on it. And so we knew we could almost double the amount of units on this particular property and really do a nice job with it. And so we told him what we'd take for it. And he said, okay. And we couldn't believe it. We're like, all right then. But we found out later, after we sold the properties to him, he was the syndicator and the contractor. So he got all his money up front. So you really got to watch out for these syndicators. And I would bet the property went back to the bank, because everything he did was high dollar stuff that he didn't need to do in an area. He upgraded the property way more than the market. And it just the return wasn't there for it. But so, yeah, we ended up buying single tenant net lease deals around Texas. Most of them are stabilized, but we have a couple that we're working on that are, short leases that we're going to flip. We'll renegotiate the lease, and we'll bring in a new tenant, and then we'll decide if we're going to sell it or not. We're in negotiations on those properties. And then right now we are raising funds. We're going to raise about $3 to $5 million for a syndication on single tenant net lease deals, stabilized single tenant lease deals.
You say single tenant lease deals. Can you elaborate? Like, what do you mean by that? Is it what asset type is this?
Yeah, triple net deals. So
triple net deals.
Fast food franchises, pharmaceutical companies, Walmarts, that kind of stuff. We tend to buy. We really like fast food. Or banks. We do bank, Chase Bank. We have, they're. You just need to find a great market and a great lease. The triple net STNL things, they're the most liquid form of real estate you can really own, because you can sell it pretty quickly. So we love it.
But they also trade in a lower cap rate, right? Because it's usually, if it's an anchor tenant like Starbucks or Dunkin' or some major retail guys, they usually trade in a lower cap. So how do you structure those deals?
Yeah, you go with a Starbucks or a big name like that. Typically, they are lower, but you can take on some deals that are riskier. And we did a Del Taco in Inland Empire, and there was only like a year and a half, 2 years left on it. And I don't remember the cap rate it was, but we went and renegotiated the lease. And in the renegotiation, the tenant Del Taco had to remodel the property. and we redid a 10-year lease, and I think that client in less than 8 months made over $1 million on it.
Wow. So I understand the strategy here. So
Yeah.
you're looking for someone is the end of the lease that you can come back and renegotiate some solid with financials. You talk to them probably before acquiring this property. And now you're saying, okay, do you want to stay in the property? You look at the financials, a strong tenant, and they're looking to stay and grow in that area. And now you have opportunity. Now you're buying at 5 cap, but after increasing the lease, and now you have new renovations there, tenants staying and they want to stay there. And with rent bumps, you secure in 10-year lease with rent bumps, triple net, and you get it at 7 cap now, or 8 cap, whatever it is.
Yep. You get a nice little pop on it. So we're in our portfolio, we want to have some stabilized, and then we'll do some riskier stuff on the side just in case you don't want to have a bunch, because this is our first syndication we're doing, and so we'll do another one, and that'll be higher risk. And we want to do it because I want our agents to be able to invest with us, and because I think every real estate agent should be an investor as well, and I'm
100%.
trying to create that opportunity for our team. And so that's why we're setting things up the way we do.
And I want to, it's a great point, and I think it's also give your potential clients as a brokerage, right, some peace of mind that you guys also investors. Mm-hmm. It's not only you just transactional broker, hey, buy and sell it and trying to find someone, but you also have this experience and you can get feedback if the price right, if in condition and market, and really be knowledgeable that area. I think that's very important in terms of client for the brokerage. Now I want to rewind a little bit for our listeners when you mentioned about that you sold your multifamily properties to builder syndicator. I think that's important lesson here, guys. Again, coming back to know your market, but you cannot put class A amenities and finishes in class C neighborhood. You need to know the market. You need to understand who will be there and what is their maximum cap rent they can pay, right? If the medium household income 40,000, they can pay only third of it annual wise. And you trying to charge $2,000 per month, it's not going to happen most likely, unless something happens in the area and the household income grows drastically. So that's an important lesson here.
Absolutely. Before you put money in with a syndicator, you want to do just like a property, you want to do your due diligence on them. What's their experience? Talk to their past investors. Make sure they're really their past investors. Really do a deep dive in them to make sure they are exactly who they say they are. They get the kind of returns they say they do. And, you just want to look at their track record.
And just last question on the brokerage side, what asset types are you guys focusing? You're commercial brokerage. Is there a specific asset type you're good at, or you just doesn't matter for you?
Full service. We have everything.
Full service.
We're full service. We have retail leasing. We have everything. So we have agents that do it. We have 22 agents, and they're all focused on different. Well, some of them are crossover, but yeah, we also have Icon Capital Advisors. It's a commercial real estate mortgage company that we're partners with BMC Mortgage out of Dallas. And then we have the Commercial Real Estate Affiliate Network, which is built out of frustration in COVID. We had brought clients over for retail. We brought a company from Lorna Jane is what it was called. And they came from Australia. And we brought them over, brought everybody over. We set them up in California, found them 9 locations, and they want to relocate across the country. We couldn't help them because we were just here in LA. We thought, well, this isn't smart. If we're going to be able to pull these people in from our marketing, we need to be able to work with them. And then I started checking out what affiliate memberships cost, which I don't know if you've looked at those, Alex, but that would make you cry. I'm like, are you kidding me? That annual fee, and then there's a fee on every deal. So I created the Commercial Real Estate Affiliate Network, and it is a group of independent commercial real estate brokers that work around the country. We have 27 members now, and we pass deals back and forth. The only cost is if I refer you a deal and you're a member, you owe me a referral fee back. And we negotiate that referral fee before we do the deal, and it's a minimum of 20%. So if I send you one, but I said, listen, this is my old client. All you have to do is send me properties or maybe do 4 or 5 showings. Let's do the deal 50-50, whatever, it's negotiable. And so it's just a way for the independent commercial real estate brokers to be able to compete against the big firms.
I love it. And your commercial brokerage, you have 22 agents, you said.
Mm-hmm.
Are you specifically in your area, or you spread nationwide?
We're all over Los Angeles, California.
Just Los Angeles, California.
Yeah, California.
Okay.
Yep.
So what's your future for the brokerage and other companies that you build, and what are your 5-year plan here?
Well, with Icon Capital, we're just going to keep growing that. We launched it right during the first day the interest rates went up. That's the date we launched, and we didn't mean it. We scheduled that about 8 months out, so we've let that kind of stuff. That was bad luck, but it's going okay. And small overhead on that one. Affiliate network just keeps growing. We're going to keep growing that one, and we'll probably figure out a way to really just add more depth to it. That's really, what more services can we add for our brokerage, but our broker members. Commercial Brokers International, we are going to grow to about 25 agents. So we're in talks with a few agents right now here in Los Angeles, and really want to be more invested in the investment side. We don't have a very big investment team, and I want to grow that. And then we're going to open an office for Commercial Brokers International in Orange County, probably in Newport Beach area, right around Corona Del Mar, Newport Beach. And then as far as the Joe Killinger, we're just going to keep training, mentoring agents, and trying to help them get them on track to really help build a career. I really want to have, I want to be able to take at least 100 brokers over my career and have turned them into millionaires. I really want to take brokers that are really struggling, help them find their path. And there's a booklet on joekillinger.co. It's called Your First 90 Days in Commercial Real Estate. That booklet is free for everybody. And there's also one that is how my process that I went through when I was going from an agent to a broker owner that we went through. So a lot of mistakes in there that you don't have to make because I made it. So those booklets are free on the website.
Very good. Thank you. Joe, I have only the last few questions for you. Quick hits, lightning round. Okay. So whatever first comes to your mind, let us know. One book or resource that made a big impact on your real estate or business mindset?
Everything with marketing is going to storytelling. And storytelling is pretty complicated. And I don't know that it changed my life or not, but Matthew Dix wrote a book called Storyworthy. That is a good book that everybody should be checking out, because in any business, people, they don't really care. They want to hear a story. They want to hear what you've done, and that's why I don't know if you know what proof stacking is, but it's really a story of how you and a client met, how you overcame their pain points, the whole process you went through with them, and then how you helped them in the end. And that's just good storytelling. And storytelling will change your business.
I think I wanted to say how to be a good salesperson, but I think it's more than that, because you need to build this relationship and to become friends with the person who you're talking to. Yep. So you build this rapport, and it's been just salesperson, salesy. It's not working anymore, and never actually worked. And actually building relationship and helping the person, that's what important. And build the storytelling. I think that's what warms up the ice and help to build this rapport. Very impactful for sure. I will check out this book. Thank you. It's next one. Most important. Yep. Okay. Most important trait a business leader should build.
I would say compassion. If you're going to be a business leader, you need to have compassion and understand there's a lot of emotion in what we do. And I get this every day. Sometimes I get frustrated and I just kind of take a deep breath. But I think compassion is probably big.
Yeah. One thing you wish you knew earlier on your journey.
Patience. And I see this in so many young brokers and investors, and I was one of them. And that's why that second multifamily property we bought was such a headache, going too fast, And here's the thing, back then, we didn't have the opportunity to really understand it like we do now, because the internet wasn't really a thing. Now you can do all this research. And so be patient, wait for the right deal, and that's in investing and in brokerage. If a broker offers you to come on board with them, make sure it's a good fit. Do your due diligence on that brokerage too, but always do your due diligence. And just like I said about the syndicators, do your due diligence. Know what you're getting into, because when you make a bad choice, it costs you a lot of time.
Yep. It's, slow is fast. I hear this more often. Nowadays, especially in real estate and any other business too, it's sometimes more important to go 2 steps slower, but it will go much longer way rather than proceed too fast and just fail.
Yep, that's exactly it. And I started off that way. I'm an A-type Leo that's or A-type personality that's a Leo. So I'm go, 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 go anyway. Imagine when I was 20 years old. Jesus. But yeah, it was too fast, you know. So,
Multiply 10.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, life is these gray hairs have changed a few things, gave me a little different perspective.
Yeah, love it. Okay, Joe, I have one last question for you. If someone want to reach out, talk to you, real estate, or be part of your brokerage, how people can reach out to you?
You can go on to joekillinger.co, or you can contact me there, or any social media is just under my name, Joe Killinger, or joe@joekillinger.co is my email. So happy to talk to you.
Love it. I think that's a wrap. Thank you, Joe, for coming today and sharing your story and sharing all the details, ups and downs through your humble way, and making it happen for yourself and educating a lot of people along the way and making impact in smaller communities. It's still like fascinating for me that someone reach out to you and just saying, hey, listen, this is what happened in the past, and thank you for doing that. And I thank you for being part of the community and being part of this journey for many, many people.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for taking the time. And thank you guys for listening.
Yep. Thank you so much. And for our listeners, don't forget to like and subscribe. And as always, keep moving forward.